Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Leading with Light. Nice to see everyone here. Thanks for joining. So we're making sure that everything is going the way it should go. And I want to thank you for joining, Franklin. Thank you so much for joining. I see you, Simone. Thanks for joining. I see you, Stacy. Thanks for joining. Shelly, I see you. Thanks for joining. So good to have you all here. Today we want to talk about navigating the complexities of grief in leadership. And I am starting a discussion on navigating grief and exploring the complexities of grief and also the impact on leadership. And I hope I can share some strategies for managing grief while leading. Of course, these discussions are by popular request, and also it's really to get persons to think and to form themselves as leaders, especially female leaders who are emotionally exhausted or who are actually weary, or those who are really struggling with uncertainty that comes from leadership, effective leadership, by the way. So let me just make that very clear. Now, there are persons who make a request each time for the slides to be shared so they can go over and make notes. So here am I sharing my slide again. For those who don't know me, I am Dr. Marcia Thomas, and I'm a Christian leadership consultant and an executive life coach. I also help persons with their dissertation who are completing their master's and PhD programs. And I am an author. My recent book is a new book, and it is called My Faith Looks Up. For those who have not gotten their copy, let me make it clear that your life is gone. So let me just put it up back on the screen so everybody can see. I want to place it on the screen so you all can see. So let me go back, right back, so you can see this book. Here it is. The book right here. Here it is. So here we are. Good. And so this is our book. My Faith Looks Up. It's on the screen right beside me there. All right. So we want to start our discussion. We want to get going with our discussion so that persons can, in fact, understand what we are talking about. So here we are. You can see very well now. So today we are looking at a leader. What is the expectations of leaders? So we look at the leader, and we are expected to be very strong and stoic, because that's what leadership is about. We are strong, we are stoic, we have it all together. We manage we call it professionalism, where we manage our aches and our pains, and many times we mask it. So leaders wear a mask sometimes because we are expected to be strong and stoic. But what happens when we are faced with grief? What happens? Do we put on a mask to hide our emotions, or do we risk being vulnerable or authentic? That is what I want to dig in today. And I want to welcome those who are coming, those who are here, those who will watch a replay. And I'm also looking at you sharing your thoughts with me. So don't be afraid to share your thoughts and your opinions. They are very, very important. So we want to answer those questions. Is it good to be vulnerable? Is it the best thing? Is it really the best thing to be vulnerable and to be authentic and to share your slights as a leader. So the goal for me today is to unmask that side, navigating loss, to explore the complexities of grief and loss, and the impact on leadership, and the strategies for managing grief while leading others. I want to dig into that just a little, because sometimes a lot of persons suffer loss, and they leaders, and they have to be hiding it, they have to be ignoring it, they have to be avoiding the process of grieving. And grieving comes in many forms. So we're going to talk about that also between now and the next week. Good morning, Curtis. Thanks for joining the group of us who are navigating the topic today. So we find that mostly, hi Adinga, it's so great to see you, girl. I have a new book out, My Faith Looks Up. You need to get that book. Thanks for your support, and so on. All right, so we want to look at how we explore the complexities of grief and loss, the impact on leadership, and the strategies for managing grief while leading others. And it's so important that we understand the ripple effect of grief or loss. So we want to look at what we mean when we talk about loss that results in leaders grieving. So we want to take a look at that, and I have made some points. So we're looking at the losses that cause our leaders to grieve. Loss of a loved one. And a loved one is not necessarily a family member. It can be a friend, and it can be devastating if it is a colleague, because you have to go back to the place over and over, that the colleague, and you share memories, which is your workplace or your organization, especially if you were not just a colleague and a team member, but a very good friend. And so it's not just family members. That's not just the loss that leaders experience. And if we talk about the loss of a colleague, it does not have to be that they die either. It can be that they transition and they move on into a greater promotion, or they exit your organization for upward mobility. It can be that they have relocated and so on. So that loss, that gap that is left, cause you to grieve, because you have to make the adjustment to find another team member that understands you and that both of you click and can work together. It might be as a result of a significant change or transition. And this change or transition can be that there is a change in your role and your responsibilities. So let's look at this, where you are now in charge of some Gen Zs who are not as malleable as your other colleagues used to be. So you were always dealing with young persons, but these young persons are different. 10 years down the line, you're dealing with a different breed, a different mindset, a different set of core values, a different set of skills. And so you might grieve for what used to be. You keep reminiscing on the past and how persons are, and that grief makes you inadequate in your new role, because you have to accept that these are different stock, and that you must make those adjustments now to do the same thing that you were doing, without looking back, without wishing for what used to be. And that can also be there. The transition can be that your organization sells out to some persons, and so the mission changes, the value, the worth changes, the mission changes, and more emphasis is placed on profits than people. So you're overlooked, you're treated with a lot of condescension. You maybe had a voice before, now you have to be silent in board meetings, because that's not how the structure is made. You are spoken, it's a down leadership. And so the upward form of leadership is that you're now micromanaged your creativity and innovation, is swept under the carpet. Issues are not dealt with. Disgruntlement is not dealt with. And as we relate to delegation, it's not properly done. And there's some no amount of nepotism and cronyism, and that can cause a lot of grief because the adjustment requires you to either change your core values or be very resilient and resolute in what you will not compromise. And that can make your workplace become toxic, and you can grieve what you had before, which was not perfect, but was a great and excellent environment. There might be grief because you lose a product that's most important to you, or initiative. So that also comes from change of roles and responsibilities. So a promotion can make you grieve for what you had before, because when you got to the other side, you realize that the grass was not greener, and it is too, you can't change it. And that can also be an issue. Then we have loss that comes from personal health issues or diagnosis or crisis. So you might be actually diagnosed with an issue, a serious issue that alters your family life, alters your work life, and alters your thoughts about yourself and how you will navigate because of the physical changes and because of all the adjustments, because of the financial costs that is going to be on you, the type of support system, and the diagnosis, because some are terminal and we begin to grieve before we get to the point where we really have to grapple with the loss of life. All right. And all of those require you to have some amount of faith. No, there is also the loss of trust or reputation, because there are some persons who are very skillful at distorting your reputation or exploiting your trust. And when you recognize them for who they are, and there is that separation, you can be grieving, because the disappointment, the frustration, and the pain is so great because you never expected this to happen. You never expect this circumstance, this crisis. You were prepared for everything else except this betrayal. And so it can make you grieve and can become a terrible loss. So those are the forms that leaders grieve. Now I want to go back to loss as it relates to the significant colleague or family member. Because for a leader, as I say in my book, A Leader Like You, and this is on page 185, I talk about, and so we talk about the chapters. I want to lead you to the chapter 9, Navigating Through Leadership Pain and Uncertainty. And so Sam Chang, which is somebody that I like very much, talks about when leaders in any field take the risk of moving individuals and organizations from one stage to another, from stagnation to effectiveness, or from success to significance, they inevitably encounter confusion, passivity, and outright resistance from those they're trying to lead. And he also explains that leadership is a magnet for pain, and this pain comes in many forms. However, pain is not the enemy. Rather, it is the inability or unwillingness to face pain that is a far greater danger. And so we talk about there is a pain that comes from unexpected resignations. And so some staff members, when they depart, they bring others with them. And that is what is there. So we want to look at it because we want to understand that. And then the loss of loved ones and support partners can serve as a devastation blow. But in these moments, effective leaders have to actually move into themselves. It makes you realize that you're not superhuman. And so we talk about that. I talk about it in a full chapter in A Leader Like You. But why am I emphasizing this? Because I was a request. Two of my clients lost family members this week, and I myself am grappling with the loss of an extended family member. And so, and all of those persons, I place it in my post today. One is an aunt and one is a brother. And my loss is someone that is in their 20s, graduated from medical school, excelled, would be moving on, got scholarships for research and so on, and died. So life is real, very real. How do leaders, how do they grapple with this grief? How is it demonstrated? Because sometimes with these losses, they have to move on. They really have to move on. So in these many forms, when you have the loss, the different types of losses trigger the grief, and people grieve in different ways, and it is manifested in different ways because these losses either impact you emotionally or your decision making or your leadership style. And so there are some hidden signs of grief that leaders may not always recognize. They might not even acknowledge that they are grieving for more reasons than one. And so it manifests itself in different ways. That stored emotion, that mask that you wear, manifests itself in different ways, because in previous discussions, I speak about leaking. When you fill up your inside with those stored frustrations, challenges, pain, hurt, and so on, you begin to leak. It begin to leak out in other ways. Thank you for joining, Lillian. Thank you so much. So we want to talk about how these signs can be subtle, but they can impact your leadership and your team and how you deliver. So we want to look at increased irritability or short-temperedness. So you can be showing signs of irritability or impatience. That is not your norm. You can also find yourself withdrawing or isolating from your team members or certain social events. You just don't have the push to go. And if you are the person that is required to do these events because they are organizational routines, you find that you go through the motions. You are more mechanical than transactional, and your motivation is greatly decreased. This also affects your productivity because you'll find sometimes that you're working to rule. And even if you remain over, you're not focused. Your focus is divided. And especially when it comes to certain times when that grief becomes more pronounced, when you would have shared with the person, like their birthday, when the person lost the institution and used to do certain things. So when these functions come up and you used to call on your colleague who is no longer there, it can create these emotional upheavals. And so you lose your focus. There is also sometimes when you are not caring to be absent from work at all. You used to worry when you're not. You used to check in, you used to call in, but you relish those moments when you're not at work. And you don't look forward to going, and you become a little teddy too, because you begin to let some things slide that never used to slide, because life is short, and you find that certain things really don't matter. And then there are the physical symptoms, as the headache, the increase in your pressure. You might find that your insulin level goes up. You have chronic fatigue because you're not sleeping enough. And you might also find that you might have aches and pains, or you might be losing your hair, or your vision becomes a little diminished because there are other factors attached, because you're now grieving and silently navigating whatever you are trying to manage, the stress, the grief, the emotional exhaustion, the fact that you needed to take the time off to actually accept and process your emotions and the challenges and struggles you are having because of the loss that I have identified. And you also have difficulty delegating tasks or trusting persons as a leader, especially those who are insensitive to what you are going through. And believe it or not, there can be times when the persons who are your CEO, your colleagues, and so on are very insensitive because you have always been strong, you have always been there, you have always been showing up. And these individuals know are not understanding that you need someone to be strong for you and that you need some allowance and that you're not yourself. There is nobody there that is understanding or seeing what you are not seeing, because you are expected to have it all together, to still have the answers and so on, because you lead. So even the persons nearest to you that are your vice people, who are the vice people who are supposed to be there supporting and edging you on, these persons themselves are not understanding, because the mask that you're wearing is so convincing that they are not sure if it is that you really need them or not. And that can be quite disappointing and devastating for you, and can make the storm and the grief a little burdensome and a little heavy. Thanks for joining, Nicholas. It's great to have you. It doesn't matter. You can always watch the replay. And so, as we talk about grief, let's talk about why some persons do not acknowledge the grief or might not be seeing the grief, acknowledging the grief or seeing the grief. So we want to look at it, because many times we find that we are not grieving because we don't want to be too vulnerable, and we don't want persons to feel that we don't have it all together. Let me explain something to you. You don't have it all together. So you might find that the person struggling with grief becomes withdrawn or irritable, and this affects your team morale and productivity. You might find that you are under this pressure to remain a have it all together exterior, a stoic stance, because you feel that if you show up hurting and weak, you might just be, oh my Lord, making yourself undermining your own authority. And so that mask, you hang on to it very carefully. And you ignore the ripple effect, because grief can affect our decision making. It can affect our choices or overall well-being. And as leaders, we need to take steps to manage it, because as you struggle, you might become more and more irritable, and you might begin to isolate persons that you should be keeping close to you. And that is not what you want. So you do it because you actually have this fear of appearing weak or vulnerable. And then there is also the pressure in your organization to maintain a strong leadership image. And the other side of it is that you don't have enough, you lack self-awareness. You don't know what triggers you and how you really trigger others at this time, because you are making sure that your schedule gets busier and busier. So you shut out the loss or the grief. And the other competing priorities that comes with leadership also shut out and that is it. So the issue now becomes a complex issue because there are losses that trigger grief. There are signs, hidden signs when persons don't grieve. And why leaders do not recognize their grief. And so this pressure to maintain a strong exterior becomes overwhelming at some point. And these reasons become excuses that you have to face much longer, much later. And this is not good, because what you do with cracks is that you fill them out. Cracks cannot be left. If they are left, they get worse and worse. That's the ripple effect of grief and loss that is not handled, that is not confronted, that is not processed. And it can lead to burnout. It can lead to mental illness, and it can also lead to actually a loss of your confidence and a lack of your bearings in such a way that you become ineffective. And so you go through the motions and nobody is really impacted and nothing is impacting you, because you become so disillusioned and disconnected that you no longer serve the purpose that you are supposed to serve. So here am I now, and we want to talk about how you navigate this grief, because it is very important that you practice self-care, whether you are experiencing loss or grieving, but more so when you're experiencing loss and grief. It is also important that you nourish your soul. And so you want to give yourself permission to grieve and feel your emotions. Cry if you feel like crying. Take the time to step away, to pour out. Tears have a very healing effect. You also want to, when we talk about giving yourself permission, you also want to scream if that is it. If you need to take some time away from others and spend time in the environment that is there, having the connection with the colleague who has moved on, still maintain a professional or a friend relationship with that colleague who has moved on. If you find that you would want to talk about it, talk about it. And so if you want to also have your memory album, which is also in your mind, the songs you used to play and so on, deal with it. Give yourself permission to feel the pain and to accept your struggles and your challenges that you're having navigating this loss or grief. The other thing about giving yourself permission to grieve is to accept what has happened, because it will not change because you want to wish it away. Denial doesn't mean that it didn't happen also. So you want to confront it, and so you want to accept what has happened. You want to call it what it is, and you want to feel what has happened. You want to, when you accept, you want to look at what is the effect on you, how it is changing things, what is the lesson you are learning from this loss, what is the value of this loss, because you might lose a family member or a friend or a colleague, but how would they want you to carry on their legacy is the value that I'm talking about. What would they want you to do? Would they want you to give up your life? Would they want you to stop living? Would they want you to become tardy? Would they want you to isolate yourself, become withdrawn? Would they want you to actually move away from other persons? Would they want you to malfunction in your role, responsibilities, and space? That is accepting what has happened. That is the looking at what value it is adding to you. what you need to change, and what are the lessons, so you can actually honor that loss and that grief. And then you want to, as you begin to give yourself permission to grieve, and as you begin to navigate the feelings, the different feelings and emotions that come with this loss, you want to seek support from your trusted colleagues, your friends, or your mentors. You want to have persons who can be there for you, who can support you, who can help you to face certain truths and realities, and who can walk alongside you when you take the next steps towards healing, towards growth, towards the change that you need to change, and towards the steps that you want to take to handle the grief or your loss. Then you want to prioritize your self-care and take the breaks when needed. And sometimes, because you see how other persons might handle their grief, you want to be prepared. You want to have a position, a made-up mind of understanding that if I lose this family member, this is the toll it is likely to take on me. So I would maybe need 2 months from my job, and you want to understand that you can only get a month. So you want to put down funds that in event you have to take an extra month, you can take the leave without pay. You also want to, so that's one of the ways that you prioritize self-care. Good morning, Nicholas. Good to see you. So you want to make sure that you also get your doctor's appointments in, take your supplements, do your meditation, have your rest. And you want to do that as often as you need to. You also want to, in prioritizing your self-care, avoid those persons who are taking it as hard of you, because misery loves company. So you want to support them from a distance until you have your emotions, your realities, your struggles under control. So you want to also look at it like that. So you can refer people who are closer to them and who are managing until you are able to. And then you can have a moment of celebrating the small steps that you take today to navigate the different loss, the loss of the project, the loss of the family member, the trusted friend or colleague, the loss, the change or the transition that you had to go through. Because sometimes, as I say, you grieve because you have to, a few of my colleagues or clients are wives of pastors, and when they are redistributed to a district or assigned, they have to pack up again and leave. So they constantly are in a state of grieving the job that they have left, or the community that they have left, or the bonds that they have formed. Much harder for them. So you want to prioritize your self-care. You want to have times when you get together with those who used to be a part of your community, those who are become near and dear to you, those you can trust. So you can actually start what we call a support group for all of those persons. So you still have time where you meet with them once or twice a week, online or virtually online, that is, which is virtually, and or catching up with them in a designated space at particular times. So you would set the times and you would make sure that you show up. All right. And you want to communicate openly with your team and your stakeholders. You want to say, I'm not doing as well as I want today, and I need some grace. I need some empathy, some compassion. I need some space. And persons with a heart, because not every organization has a heart, will allow you the space and the time to adjust. And they will do it in a timely fashion, and they will do it in a supportive way. And they will do it also in a very caring way, and they will actively listen to what you say and what you have not said. And you must also be available to do the very same thing and to recommend the same thing for team members if the position is reversed, where they are the one that are grieving or suffering loss, and they have to navigate because sometimes persons don't receive a particular promotion because it's not God's timing for them. And this is not where God is going to want them to remain, but they are not seeing it in that way. And so they are grieving in the job. They become less effective, less productive, less motivated. And as a leader, you want to point them in the direction of accepting what has happened and how they can actually prioritize their self-care, how they can share what they're really feeling and the whys of it. You get them to move into that direction. And so if you, in my Faith Looks Up, I deal with how leaders can actually help their colleagues and their team members to have faith when there is this type of disappointment or betrayal in their mind, and understand it in the context of God knowing what is best for them and when. So that's very, very important. Thank you, Ayobami, for saying it is good to be here. You also want to, how would I put it now? I want to talk about vulnerability. Yes, you want to be authentic and vulnerable. You don't want to really hide behind any mask. You want to, as you embrace vulnerability and authenticity, show that human side of you. You first of all have to understand that you are a human and that life happens, and it happens to everyone. And in the same way, death looks the same for everyone physically. It might not look the same emotionally, because some of how what persons mean to people and how they navigate. But death, when somebody dies, the person is no longer around. And so death looks the same. That's what I want to us to understand. It doesn't sound the same for everybody, and it does not feel the same. That is important. And that is why we cannot have generic measures put out there, and we cannot use one brush. I lost 3 members of my family once. And when I got into my space, didn't take enough time either, and navigated, and I needed a break. My supervisors explained that they lost a family member, and they have to be moving, they have to be going, they have to be doing what they need to get done. So it's no different for me. I have to find a way to move and to get things done. I lost 3 family members in very, very quick succession, almost in a month. And that is how the person sees it. So I'm saying that you have to have compassion on yourself, and you have to understand that you are human. At one point, as a leader, I had to be supporting persons in my organization during COVID that lost multiple family members. Not one staff member, not one colleague, several. And in the meantime, we lost individuals from the organization. All of us had to be contending with our humanity and with the loss. And persons felt it in different ways because of the nearness or closeness of the relationship. And so you have to understand that you are human. You have to be open and honest about your emotions and struggles. And you have to create that culture of openness and support in your organization, in your family, in your community, so that you can get by, because it's very important that we understand the importance of that. And when we talk about creating a culture of openness and support, we're talking about tearing down the walls, allowing people to grieve how they grieve, and allowing persons to be themselves, because that is very important. And if you create a culture of openness and support as a leader, by being vulnerable and authentic, you can help your team to feel more comfortable sharing their emotions and their struggles, sharing the loss that they're experiencing, that they are keep tightly locked to their chest, the divorce, the struggle of losing a child to addiction. Those types of things cause team members and leaders to grieve. And so you want to make sure that your team feels comfortable sharing their emotions and struggles. And you must feel comfortable sharing your own experience with grief and vulnerability, because it happens. So I want us to understand that it is not easy when we are experiencing loss or grieving, especially if it's a multiple effect. We want to find ourselves scheduling our regular check-ins with our coach also. I want us to understand that. So you can process your emotions and develop coping strategies and dig deep into what are the things that you have placed in your emotional attic. What have you stored there? What is the brokenness that you're having there? What is the pain? What is the disappointment? What is the hurt? And what you need, and confront what you need and the strategic ways in which and actions that you need to take to get to where you want to be. And so here are some key takeaways as we move. Grief is a universal human experience that affects leaders. And I'm sure you will agree that it affects leaders too. And leaders are not immune to grief, and it can impact their emotional well-being, their decision-making, and their leadership style. We want to have that as an important takeaway. Grief also manifests itself in subtle ways. So leaders may not always recognize or acknowledge their grief, and it can manifest in different ways, such as increased irritability, withdrawal, and decreased productivity. It can also manifest itself in isolation of those who are dear to you. And also it can also reflect in self-harm. Now, as we talk about that, we also want to understand that we must create a safe and supportive environment. That's very crucial for us. We must create it around ourselves. So we must shut out those things that keep pushing us down, draining us as we grieve. And we must reach for those things that will honor the person, honor the loss, change the landscape of the lessons learned from that failed project or assignment, how we look at ourselves navigating self-awareness and emotional intelligence when there's a transition in the organization that is making you grieve. Know when you are to exit and know when you are to remain put and know when you are to wait. Those are some of the lessons that loss must teach us. And so we want to create that safe place as a leader, and we want that safe place. We want to make sure that we sustain and maintain a safe place for discussion of emotions and the struggles without fear or judgment, and without the fear of appearing weak. Because the fact of the matter is, when persons are hurting, when they are grieving, when they are struggling, they are weaker. So you even if you appear weak, you are actually weak. The strength is having to remain, choosing not to remain in that moment of weakness, that challenge, or in that moment of pain, deciding that I will not remain here. So we want to build resilience, and we want to build people's courage. We want to build people's faith, and we want to press people into their purpose when we create a safe and supportive environment for them to navigate their grief or their loss and build their resilience. You want to be there. And sometimes being there means that we create the space and we show up, but we are silent. We don't have to be saying anything for them. They must know that they have this refuge. They must know that they have this retreat. They can retreat. And that's so important. And I'm speaking from a very personal experience. They must feel very safe retreating, navigating the moment of weakness, the struggles, the emotions. They must have a culture of openness and support. And they must also have protectors. So you must have someone who can protect you, that you trust, that you can be your real self around, that will just steer you back when you're fumbling in this darkness and steer you back into light. And you must become that support when it is turned, simply because you not only have the experience, meaning that you have been there, done that, but you also now come with a different revelation that heightens and elevates your compassion and your empathy and the dignity that you want persons to maintain throughout the loss or the grief. And so you are supporting persons so that they can exercise the required self-control that is needed from the experience and how they can grow and develop. So that is where we want to end. So we are saying today's focus is that leadership is not about hiding the cracks. It's about embracing the imperfections and finding strength in vulnerability. And that in itself is a quote. I use quotes from either A Leader Like You, which is one of my books that chapter 9 talks about is grieving this loss, transitioning, navigating or leading with loss. And also My Faith Looks Up, which is my newest book. And so I want to share as I go in, I want to say if this resonated with you, you want to, and you're a Christian leader in your space, you want to also subscribe to my Christian Leadership Essentials, which is soon to be on Substack, and it's also on LinkedIn right now. You can actually access it on the Substack panel. If you want to move a step further to find clarity and renewed faith in every season and courage, then you want to grab your copy of My Faith Looks Up. And I'm showing the book right here again. I want to read an excerpt from it very briefly for you. As I look at my time, I have 40 minutes left. And it is Embracing the Journey. It says, dear reader, if you have picked up this book, it is likely because you, like so many of us, are searching for something more, waiting in between God's silence, suspended between pain and promise, wondering if your faith is or should be working. Those excruciating moments between betrayal and vindication, heartbreak and healing, struggle and breakthrough, your resignation and identifying the open doors, your fear and faith, your helplessness and hope. You have felt the nudge, the whisper, the undeniable sense that there is a deeper purpose waiting to be unveiled. Perhaps you have achieved external success, yet an inner longing persists. Maybe you are facing a season of uncertainty or navigating a wilderness that feels both daunting and desolate. My Faith Looks Up is not just a book. It is a companion on your journey towards discovering the divine why instead of what, and embracing your God-given purpose. It is a collection of reflection stories and practical guidance born from my own experiences and the wisdom I have gleaned from walking alongside others. Within the pages, you will find encouragement to navigate your own wilderness seasons, to find strength in your faith, and to discover the unique ways God is calling you to serve. We will explore how to integrate your faith into every aspect of your life, how to overcome challenges with grace, and how to cultivate a deeper connection with the one who created you for a purpose. I say today, may your faith look up and may you discover the extraordinary purpose that awaits you in your loss and in your grief. You also want to complete your free purpose alignment audit, and you want to book your free soul sync strategy session. From there, we will see what you need, the steps that you must take to join the Purpose Accelerator program. So today, I want to say to you, get your copy to start the journey, reach forward. Thank you so much for joining. And I want you to remember, as you look, I want to take you through your leadership challenge for today. I want you to ask yourself the question, how have you navigated grief in my leadership journey? Ask yourself that. How have I navigated grief in my leadership or life journey? What strategies have helped me to cope with difficult emotions? And how can I create a culture of openness and support in my family and in my organization? I want you to think about that. And as we go, I say thank you so much for joining today. And always remember, as you lead with life, that you're not just a leader, you're a vessel, and your soul matters. God is not calling you to lead on fumes, He's calling you to lead from an overflow. Have a blessed Self-Care Tuesday, and see you next week when we wrap up this series on navigating loss. Thank you so much for coming. Lillian, Ruth, Shelley, thank you for coming. Ayubami, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Thank you for joining, Nicholas. Thank you for joining, Adinga, Curtis. Thank you for joining, Franklin and Simone. Thank all those who are watching on YouTube. And I want to thank all those who will be watching the replay. Please share your thoughts and so on, so that we can all learn from each other. Have a great day. See you next week.